Welcome back to the Nameless Packers pod. Today we are going all the way around the NFL. Some interesting stuff happening, trade deadline. We will talk about the NFC North in Keep Your Enemies Closer. And once again, we got a special guest. We got Paul Bretl coming on today. Can't wait for that. I'm your host, Brady Augustine, joined as always by the woman who is getting ready to help Team USA win gold in flag in the Olympics in 2025.
Is that me?
The football girl, Erin Knapp. Erin, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, even though the team is doing really bad right now. It's just, This kind of like, I think I've been feeling like the sky is falling and trying to keep myself together for the sake of all the listeners out there.
Yeah.
But now I'm not sure anymore. But it was an interesting week of football. We had Myles Garrett break the sack record for his age. And of course, since he plays for the Brands, I thought I would have to ask you, I would have to bring it up because, by the time he was 28, he broke Reggie White's record. And of course, all of our listeners are huge Reggie White fans. He, of course, played for the Green Bay Packers with Brett Favre and brought us a Super Bowl. So, what do you think of that? You want to throw a congratulations out there to Myles Garrett?
I don't. It reminds me of is the, there's like a meme or a GIF or something of Stephen A. Smith that everybody uses on Twitter where he's like, I'm just going to tell you, we don't care. And that's exactly how I feel. We don't care.
We don't care. Yeah. Well, we are going around the NFL. So, but we did have the Niners got beat again. Niners got beat by the Vikings of all things.
Big upset,
which we're going to have to figure that one out soon as well right now, which doesn't look like we're figuring too much out right now. But Bills got upset as well by
Patriots.
Yeah, so
what?
Yeah. I mean, Bill Belichick gets his big contract and they start winning games. So he's going to be around a while and they beat the Bills. That's a little bit concerning if you're a Bills fan at this point. And I think Bills fans are kind of over this stuff now. But so at any rate, the trade deadline coming up, Halloween.
Yes.
And I believe 5:00 Eastern with the Packers in the situation they are in. And we're going to ask Paul this later as well, I believe. Mm-hmm. But are you a trade yes or trade no on a very young team, youngest team in the league, to try and get some help? And if so, do you have a position that you would be like, if we could just get help here?
I mean, if I'm going to trade, I'm trading for somebody on the O-line.
Okay. A very good point because
a veteran.
I think we'll get to that later in the show.
I think so.
So, at this point, looking around the league, I think the running back situation is probably the best in terms of potential trade, and I do think that could be a help for us. However, as we'll talk about later, A.J. Dillon kind of got going this time, so maybe we're headed toward better things there. But the Packers go down to the Broncos 17-19. In a game that I call the debacle in Denver, and I tweeted out, I think I tweeted out before this game or put on Facebook, if Matt LaFleur has a bye week and all this time that you can take this team to Denver and get them acclimated and they lay an egg, I am going to rant. Now I'm going to hold I'm not going to do that today. I'm trying to stay positive today anyway, but I am this close. We are going to be introducing next week a new segment that we promised you a long time ago. It's going to be Ship Captain Crew time. And how that's going to work is we're going to play a little round of Ship Captain Crew and winner gets to go off on whatever.
And that's what you're going to save your rant for?
It may very well be that, yeah. Okay. If something worse doesn't happen in between after the Vikings game, I just don't know at this point. The Packers are not playing well at all right now. There were, going back over this game, there are still, when Jordan Love is on time, when we have some semblance of rhythm, there are still, I promise you guys, as much as you may not believe it, there are still some good things happening. There are times when we're making good decisions, we're getting the ball out in rhythm, and the offensive line is protecting well. And then in this game in particular, having A.J. Dillon start to step up a little bit, I think was good. However, all in all, it's a pretty ugly product.
Did you see how close I got to predicting the score?
I was going to ask you how close, because I couldn't remember your other.
Mine
you said
was
17,
17-16.
16. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Well, pat yourself on the. Here,
I at
we
least
do
got
this.
the under.
This is what we do.
Thanks,
yeah,
Mom.
heck
I
yeah.
got the under.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bet the under, which I thought was smart. I went with I thought we were going to actually score in this game and bounce back. Absolutely wrong. And I will never. And here's the thing, though. Denver is a bad team. That's the thing that makes us all so upset about this, is Denver is a bad team. And we have shown, and in one game, that we're able to put up points against a bad team. And now for 2 games in a row, and this was Las Vegas all over again. It was virtually the same thing, right down to the critical interceptions, the bad decision making. Packers go down to the Broncos. We do have a chef's kiss in this one.
There were a couple highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple highlights.
All right, you want mine first?
Sure.
Because I have to talk about this for just a little.
Okay.
I promise, a little. The Dontavian Wicks catch off the Romeo Doubs ricochet. In our family, we call it a Shaq-a-ray. So the Shaq-a-ray off Romeo Doubs that Dontavian Wicks picked up.
Reed picked up.
Oh, it was Reed, yes.
Yeah,
Jaden
you're trying
Reed,
to
yes.
steal my chef's kiss.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, subconsciously. And I've got it written right here, Jaden Reed. So not reading my own cards either. Jaden Reed. Now, the thing that got me so excited about that is really difficult to do. All that you're trying to do as a cornerback is just change the direction of the ball at the last second. And that is almost always going to be successful in causing a pass breakup, a PBU. And this going the opposite way, I just couldn't be happier. And apologies to Jaden for getting the wrong name, but for Jaden, the kind of reflexes you have to have for that. I mean, it was insane. It's one of those plays that, listen, we didn't really do anything right except Jaden Reed did at the end. But that's my chef's kiss for that.
I like it. It just reiterates the fact that he's a playmaker. Mm-hmm. He's in the right spot. He's not giving up. He's battling.
He's battling.
Yeah,
he is battling.
My chef's kiss is the trick play that Wicks did.
That's
the one I'm thinking of. Which, oddly enough, I saw the exact same play in the 49ers Vikings game. Love to Wicks, who I didn't realize this was a quarterback in high school.
Yeah.
So they said that LaFleur has noticed, and the coaches have noticed his passing here lately and how he can throw the ball. So they were practicing all last week for it, and he got it to Jones, and Jones picked up a first down, which was then reversed, probably because of some penalty.
Which is one more thing that we could talk about, is just this continually seeing these pre-snap in particular penalties. I'm sure Paul may touch on that in a little bit as well. It's just got to stop. There's enough youth on this team to expect mistakes, but the one mistake that you're not supposed to be making once you get to high school is these pre-snap things in particular. So another rough day.
And it's not just the young guys, though. If you look at it, it's across the board. I mean, I think Jenkins had something. I know there were some defensive penalties from guys who just knew better, and that's the problem.
It's a problem across the board, and it's got to get cleaned up if we're going to have a chance to win any games. And, at some point, talking about Matt LaFleur again, which is what, the discipline is not there. And again, this was off the bye week. And as one that went in with the hope that we would hit our stride a little bit, get back into rhythm. That's what that's what he talked about all week. And then not seeing that and then seeing the mistakes, it's really disappointing. These kind of mistakes are correctable too. That's the one good thing about it. We're not getting them corrected now. That's a problem, but they are correctable. So,
yeah.
All right. So around the North has gotten interesting.
Can I just say one thing about that Broncos game?
Yes.
We should have won that game.
Of course.
It came down to a penalty. Eventually, we're in 3rd and 20, I believe. 3rd and 20.
Mm-hmm. And
an interception to end the game. We should have been able to kick a field goal to make it 20-19, and we would have won by 1 point. But the penalties and the interceptions, again, this isn't the only week, again, have lost a game for us.
At critical times.
Yes.
You know what I'm going to say, though. Since it was 17-19, it was Anders that lost the game.
Shut I know he
That
was.
coming.
Listen.
He has been probably the best. He's the best scorer on the team right now. So, he gets his
know.
one. It was interesting to me that he missed it at Mile High, because that air is, he was kicking, I can't remember the number. I think Mike Spofford reported he was kicking like from 60 before the game.
Yeah, and they said there
just
wasn't relatively no wind.
Yeah.
Should have known that was going to happen.
All right. So the
All right, now we
Packers
can move on to
now,
the North.
Now we can move on. Well, Packers go down 17-19. The Vikings beat the Niners 22-17 in a game in which the 49ers did not have a single sack, which to me is unbelievable. And you've got to start to wonder, they didn't have Deebo Samuel again, and you can tell Christian McCaffrey is far from 100%. He's trying to be real. They're calling it oblique. He's trying to be real secretive about it because he doesn't want to give away any. He still kept his record up of touchdowns per game, getting a touchdown in this one. But the Vikings went ahead and won that one. And now, we're going to talk about that in a bit. That's who we've got to play this week. So
Yeah.
they're going to be a confident team, I think, now. They won this one at US Bank, got to travel to Lambeau. But it's not a hop, skip, and a jump type of a thing. Cousins has been playing well. We have quarterback issues. Their O-line didn't give up a sack, and we are just looking confused on our offensive line. In this game, you're outside at Lambeau. The weather's starting to get cold. Maybe we can get a run game going and have a chance. But, boy, it's looking rough.
Yeah.
Lions. Did you see the Lions-Ravens game, or did you?
I didn't watch that game.
Okay, nobody did after a while. They switched the coverage to the Ravens, or to the Buccaneers-Falcons game because it was so bad it was unwatchable. Oh. And to be honest, and I know we had Ryan on the show last week. I know he would agree with me here, and many would. This is the kind of defense I thought the Lions were going to field, and they were playing really well.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to go back over that one. I hope that Matt LaFleur is, because to see, what the keys were to, the Ravens, who, the Ravens being that, the score was 38-6.
Yeah, and they haven't played very well this season, but they're always that kind of team that you're like, they're gonna get close to the playoffs. They're just kind of, it's week by week with them. You just never know what they're gonna do.
The Ravens or the Lions?
The Ravens.
The Ravens, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was why, to some extent, with how consistently the Lions had been playing, it was a little bit of a surprise that I thought at least the Lions are going to put up a fight, and it did not end up. But, just about every team has that one day, that one bad day during the season, which is, there have been some of those games so far, and, Packers were on the winning side of that one week one. It wasn't, obviously we didn't hold them to 6. In this game, in the Broncos, if all we had to do was score 20 points, we could have won this game. And so the defense, I think, is doing enough. So, the situation is dire. There's still a ton of football to be played, but, this is a Packers team that is really struggling to find anything that it can sort of sink its teeth into. The offense struggling, of course. Youth is part of that, but excuses don't last very long in the NFL, and we're kind of at that point. So, Vikings coming to town.
Are you not going to talk about the Bears?
Oh, I almost forgot. They're at the bottom of the list, and I did want to talk about the Bears because they had to have lost, right? Yeah, the Bears win 30-12 with Tyson Bagent.
Yeah.
As the quarterback. Fields, with the dislocated thumb, was unable to go.
Right.
And I did not look up his stats in this one, but they put up 30 points.
Yeah, they did.
Something going right in Chicago, and Green Bay is now, we are falling apart. And we talked about this before. Obviously we play the Vikings this week, and then we have that Week 17 matchup against them, and we follow that in Week 18 with the Bears. So weeks ago, we were already saying, those 2 games back-to-back are really going to be something. And if we keep playing the way they are, they're not going to be that much because we're going to get trucked. But, a Packers team that can get back on track, there's still a ton of football left to play. But at this point, you're trying to find something that you can just have as your identity. So,
sure.
All right. So, there was one thing I forgot to mention in the Vikings game that the Packer Nation will appreciate. There was a Skinny Jeans Dean sighting. So we call him Skinny Jeans Dean, played for the Packers. and went to the Vikings. And I was at a Buccaneers game once when he did a scoop and score, I think it was. Kenny Clark knocked the ball out, and he's running away from me. And he's a big guy, he's a D lineman, but he's got these skinny legs. And so we started calling him Skinny Jeans Dean. But Skinny Jeans Dean got himself a fumble. So he's been, he's been in there. All right, press conferences. And for me, basically, when I heard, Matt LaFleur's press conference this afternoon, it was basically who did not participate. And we saw like 5 guys go out in the game.
Yeah.
So DNPs were Aaron Jones, Josh Myers, Luke Musgrave, Yosh Nijman, Devontae Wyatt, and Devondre Campbell, along with Jair Alexander. This list just goes on. And I'm not even including the fact that Eric Stokes was not a participant. He ends up on IR.
Yeah.
With Darnell Savage, who has also, according to Rob Domofsky, been put on IR as well. So that's the situation, and it just is not getting any better. We've had to talk about it since the beginning of the season, not even just the Packers. We did have, one good thing. Watson was a full participant, so Christian Watson is okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that we did get in terms of good news is Luke Musgrave is not in concussion protocol. He was held out just because his wheel's hurting him. He's got a bad ankle. It's just kind of hurting him. And that shot he took to the ear hole was a bad one. Jackson got fined 4 games, and then they brought it down to 2, but it's just good to see that he's okay. So
Yeah.
All right.
What a shame about Stokes.
It is. And LaFleur talked about that somewhat extensively. Yeah.
4 snaps, I think, is what he played.
4 snaps. And there he's back.
And it's a hamstring this time. So
and
it sucks.
Yeah. And we've seen how long it's taken Aaron Jones to come back from a hand.
Yeah.
They can be, depending on what degree they are too. But my goodness, it's not going to get any easier. And I think you mentioned one of the quotes that LaFleur had about what kind of progress we have made. How much has it been?
He said on Monday he's losing his mind at this point.
Yeah.
0 progress was made in the bye week. And when they asked him a follow-up of why he thinks that is, he says, no idea. That's a great question. That is a great question.
It is a great question, but I so hate that answer when your head coach is saying it. I just, I could see him saying, we'll get this fixed or something like that, and he throws himself under a bus. He never throws anybody under the bus. I appreciate that, but man, he's got to have answers. He's got to have answers at some point.
Yeah.
Or you're not gonna have a job, I guess. So we move into a game against the Vikings that looks fairly dire to me. I struggle to think that even if A.J. Dillon starts to get on a roll a little bit, we've seen him you can win games that way. It's just not real easy in the NFL. And with Jonesy just still kind of struggling to get back to 100% and not taking full reps. I have my doubts for sure about this one, even though we're playing it at Lambeau. Have you looked at the line on this one at all?
It's just a 1 point.
1 point,
spread last week. Again, we're not favored. And
we're not even covering the normal home field advantage.
But I'm kind of surprised, though. I kind of think the line's going to move a little bit. I mean, because it's Wednesday, right? Today's Wednesday. So over-under is 42.5 right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if they favor the Vikings by a few more points by Sunday.
Yeah, I could see it moving too.
Their injury report is pretty small. I took a look at it. Hawkinson is on it, but then 3 other guys, and that's it.
Must be nice. I mean, they're still without Jefferson, I believe, right? So
yes, and I don't know that I even saw Jefferson on that. But he's on the IR. He's on the IR.
Yeah, so he'll avoid landing on that list. So I'll take a shot at a prediction in this one. I just don't even want to do it anymore. I'm going to ask Paul what he thinks the Packers need to do to have a chance to win this one. I don't think we'll ask him for predictions at this point.
That's fine.
Might move away from that. Get the run game going, and you're going to have to ride A.J. Dillon in this one in the grass, natural grass. Get Wicks more involved. I think we've seen that he is the kind of guy that you can scheme open. He does well with separation. You're going to have to, I don't know if you're at the point where you're going to have to move the pocket to help Jordan Love out a little bit, because that also hurts you because you're kind of working with half the field then. I said a couple weeks ago, I thought the short passing game might be the answer. That's where Love seems to be in his wheelhouse, and the long game is just rough. The long passing game is just, it's not there right now. I don't know exactly what they do to fix that, and I certainly don't know what you're going to do between this past week and Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. So I feel like this game's you're going to have to try and keep it low scoring. You're going to have to try and control the clock. And, maybe we can, I don't even know if this team can score 20 points at this point. At home, maybe I give them 21 and we can come away with a win, 21-17, something like that. If I was going to have to put money on it, I would probably say, the Packers go down, more likely 17-21.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking the Vikings will probably score more, maybe closer to 24 or 28. Mm-hmm. And I don't think the Packers will get past 20 points. So
if the Vikings O-line continues to perform the way they did, this Packers defense might really struggle too. Yeah, without a doubt. So all right. We also we have a rookie of the week. I think
we do.
And I think we agree. So why don't you just go?
Wicks is going to be our rookie of the week.
And I'm glad that he is, because I still want to talk about how, you get a guy like that he's performing well, 5th round pick, chosen 159 overall. I mean, the guys, you don't have that high of an expectation on a team where we're kind of loaded now with draft choices, especially on defense, we're loaded with draft choices, first rounders. But even on offense now and in the wide receiver group, we've spent some high draft capital on wide receivers, Christian Watsons, et cetera. And in the tight end group, the pass catching group. For him to perform, I mean, it's really fun to see a guy like, and I think you described, he's just a guy that goes out there and he's a playmaker. He just makes plays and keeps making plays. Want to see more of that for sure.
Well, one of the things I wanted to mention about the Vikings is that one of the things I said maybe a week or two ago was that with Justin Jefferson out, I thought they're not going to have anybody, but they had 6 different playmakers on offense during that 49ers game. So it just goes to show, when you give other people a shot, what can possibly happen. And look at with Wicks, with us, with the Packers. If you give the guys opportunities, if you don't, how are you going to know?
Right.
How are you going to know?
Yeah, you got to test them.
We can't just rely on Watson. We can't just rely on Jones and Dillon and Dobbs, the veterans and stuff. You got to give the young guys a chance.
Yeah, you got to give the Wickses and the Musgraves and the Crafts of the world a little bit of a chance. So the Packers look to get back on track against the Vikings Sunday, and this is a noon game, the normal time fun noon game in Wisconsin. Yay. That's the great thing. But before we do that, as always, we have to have our secret word.
Yes.
Because every week we have a secret word, and at the end of the season, we're going to be giving away some prizes, giving away some gift cards, giving away a nice Packers watch, maybe some t-shirts, stuff like that. But you're going to need to know the secret words to be entered for free. So check out our podcast on all your podcasting platforms. Today's secret word is penalties. And I think that's apropos. We are committing way too many of those. And if we continue doing that, we're not going to beat the Vikings. So let's hope we can do that. Now, as a special treat, and this one is special because I'm meeting Paul Bretl for the first time. He's a big dog. Really, really happy to have Paul Bretl on the show for us today. Paul, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm always happy to talk Packers, even if, things aren't going the greatest right now.
They aren't. Makes it tough for us sometimes. I will say this, and dude, this is just on a personal note. You have one of the most characteristic and recognizable voices in all of Packer podcasting.
I appreciate that. Maybe it's the Northeast Wisconsin.
I think that is probably what it is. And I live in Northeast Tennessee, maybe, but yeah, glad to have you on. Let's throw a few questions your way.
Absolutely.
So question one, I know you wrote an article in your Behind the Numbers series about the team's offensive woes, highlighting, and this just jumped off the page at me, that the Packers have been outscored 63-6 in the first halves of the last 4 games. And, of course, you very correctly say there's not one thing wrong, like everything is going wrong. However, if you could make one thing right that you thought might make the most difference for the fortunes of a Packers offense that's very young, with a quarterback that's in his first season as the full-time starter, what would you do?
That's a great question. And like you mentioned, there's so much going wrong right now. We always want to, not just in football, but I think in general, all right, what's that one thing that we got to fix? And man, it's just pure chaos around Jordan Love right now. If I had to pick the one thing, I would pick the offensive line above anything else. Football's changed a lot over the years, but at the end of the day, it's oftentimes won in the trenches still. And right now, the Green Bay Packers, they did have a better performance in the run game against the Denver Broncos. Although Denver, I believe, had one of the worst rushing defense, or the worst rushing defense in football entering the game. But nonetheless, hopefully that's signs of what's to come. Although as we take a closer look at what's unfolding on that offensive line, I'm not sure that's the case. But reason I would choose the offensive line, like I said, success starts up front. If there's no run game to lean on, that just makes everything more difficult. And this is a Packers offense right now that is really, really struggling in long down and distance situations, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 10s. Mm-hmm. And in part, the run game is meant, hopefully, to help keep you out of those situations, keep you ahead of the sticks. If you're in those predictable passing situations, the defense now has the advantage. Right. The defensive front, they don't have to defend both the run and the pass. They know you're passing. They can pin their ears back and just go from point A to point B to get after the quarterback. The secondary, from a matchup standpoint, they're able to get into favorable matchups. And when you're in those predictable, like I said, 3rd and 10 situations, like from Matt LaFleur's perspective as a play caller, there's only so much that you can really dial up in those situations. Again, that's why we call obvious and predictable passing downs. And that's just something the Packers absolutely have to avoid. If they don't pick up at least 4 yards on first down this season, it almost spells doom for that drive. Like we can almost chalk it up as a punt. And again, it's for the reasons mentioned, that benefit that the defense gets. But this passing game, as we've seen, is just not consistent enough whatsoever to shoulder the workload that comes with not having a run game to lean on. From the passing game perspective, obviously your quarterback has to have time. And I think one of the big shifts we've seen in Jordan Love this season, watching him at training camp, at all those practices, and even early on in the season, one of the aspects of his game that I was really, really impressed with was his ability to know, all right, when to fit it into the tight window, when to push it downfield, when to continue through his progression and just take what's available to him. But over these last few weeks, he hasn't had that luxury. The Lions absolutely bullied the Packers offensive line. Yes. Max Crosby single-handedly dominated that group as well. And even against the Denver Broncos, like they were rushing 4 and getting home. Mm-hmm. So again, in trying to evaluate Jordan Love and, place blame on, is it Love, is it LaFleur, like for both of them. And not to say that we shouldn't see some form of progress over this last month, but again, when the defense can drop 7 guys in coverage because they know they can get home with 4, or they know that they can stop the run with 4 defenders, like that just makes everything for everyone on that unit so much more difficult. So that's why I would choose the offensive line, because on the flip side of all that, again, if you have a strong run game to lean on that sets up play action. Jordan Love's been really, really efficient on play action this season. It keeps you ahead of the sticks. The pass rush, as I previously mentioned, like it takes away some of the pass rush's bite if they have to defend both the run and the pass. They can't just crash in and chase after the quarterback. So there's just this massive trickle-down effect to everything else within the offense that stems from the quarterback having time from having a run game to lean on. So I think if I could pick one thing that just waved the magic wand, poof, it is so much better, it would be the offensive line. And honestly, that's one of the most shocking things about this season so far, because throughout the summer, we thought this was going to be the strength of this unit. First time starting quarterback.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up.
Young pass catchers, and this group has just not not lived up to what they needed to be for such an inexperienced offense.
Yeah. And as many, I think, other than this past year, the 3 years previous to that, we drafted 3 linemen each year, and have been trying to build a team from the trenches back. And now I'm right there with you. It's the biggest disappointment because that's where the veteran leadership of the team is too, really. So it's not going to get easier. And like you say, the play action, then in a Shanahan system, now your play action, nobody's even paying attention to it. I think Andy Herman tweeted like a linebacker just waving another linebacker off, he's just like, don't bother. And I don't know, maybe he thought it was supposed to be man or something. I don't know, but it's just, it's ridiculous. That O-line getting it together would sure help.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Jordan Love has gotten a lot of heat, as the quarterback usually does. But one thing that LaFleur mentioned today in this press conference that kind of struck with me is when they talked about Love in practice, they talk about him in practice every week. And LaFleur always says he's making progress. Like he looks good in practice. And my question is, well, why doesn't that translate into a game? But then it really does come down to, like what you just said, Paul, the pressure that he gets and the fact that he doesn't have time to execute and complete.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, in practice, he knows he's not going to get hit. It's also a controlled environment. The offense goes out with a specific plan. The scout defense that they're going against, we got to keep that perspective as well. This is, the practice squad guys, the end of the roster guys on that unit. And they're asked to defend, again, in a controlled environment, how, for this week's opponent, the Vikings, what they think the Vikings might do to try to generate some, real looks for Jordan Love. But again, it's all controlled. One, and I'll get into this later, but, the Broncos absolutely switched things up on the Packers in terms of what they had planned for basically the whole bye week. And, with such a young group, it's tough to lean on. And one other thing I'll say about the offensive line is like Zach Tom has been really, really steady on that right side, that right tackle. Like he's the bright spot within that. And then Elton Jenkins, who, you hope that the floor is your Pro Bowl level player. He hasn't been that this season. He's taken some lumps, and just like several other players on this line, like he's had some big misses that, that holding penalty that put the Packers in 2nd and 20 at the end of the game, instead of being in second and, or it would have been 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, like that was on Elton Jenkins. Going back to the Raiders game, that last interception that Jordan Love threw at the end of the game, there was a block that Elton Jenkins missed, which forced Love out of the pocket and delayed him trying to get that ball to Christian Watson. Like if Jenkins picks up that block and Love gets that ball out of his hands sooner, where Watson has more separation. Again, I'm not going to sit here and predict that it's a touchdown game over, but I do like the chances of it coming out that way versus what ended up happening. So he's, you look to him without Bakhtiari as he needs to be that stabilizing force presence on that offensive line with the other individuals that they have. And he just hasn't played up to that level yet this season.
Yeah, I would agree. He stood out to me in this past game too. I was really kind of disappointed. And
second rounder too, and it makes it tough. One of the things that I was a little concerned with Jordan, I don't know about you, Paul, but is watching him in the preseason. There were times when I thought he was letting his feet carry him to trouble, and in games, you get into the season, I was a little concerned about that, and I've seen less of that. I've basically seen what you're saying is the failings of the offensive line are pushing him into trouble that should not be there in the first place with a young quarterback.
And he's had to make a tough adjustment on the fly because it's, this swing is specifically in pass protection has been like kind of out of nowhere. Like the first 3 games of the season, this group held up really well in pass protection. And so if we think about Jordan Love, first time starting quarterback, like his internal clock, of knowing like, all right, when do I, got to get the ball out, when it's the time to leave the pocket, things like that. Like where it was through the first 3 games when he had all that time, I forget what game it was after. I think it was the Saints one. He was talking about one of the plays where he went through his entire progression and still no one was around him from the defensive front perspective. And he was kind of like, whoa, okay. So you go from that to the Lions game in the matter of a few days Like, that's just a massive, massive shift in what he has to adjust to.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an experience factor with that. Again, another thing that I was so impressed with him early on was that internal clock, like his pocket awareness and presence and just ability to feel the pressure and know when to escape, but still, you know, keeping his eyes up, trying to still get the ball downfield. I thought was really, really impressive, because you tend to chalk that aspect up to an experience standpoint to a degree.
Right.
And obviously we know he's been in the NFL for a few years, but not starting.
Yeah.
So again, I thought that was a really mature aspect of his game, but now that's just been flipped upside down with all of a sudden, like that Lions game, it doesn't matter what LaFleur would have dialed up in that game. It doesn't matter who they're trying to get the ball to, like how quickly the Lions got in the backfield. When that happens, nothing else matters. It's a nearly impossible task.
Yeah. Talking a little bit more about the offense to finish off, we talked about the growing pains of having a young offensive team. What's your outlook going forward with a team this young? Is coaching and repping going to be enough to contend with teams like the Vikings or the Lions in the future?
You know, that's a great question. And I think Rasul Douglas said, I believe it was last week, that, you know, they can't rely on, you know, the youth, you know, as being an excuse for why they're playing that they are. And that's 100% true. Mm-hmm. Like, at the end of the day, NFL is a results-based business. You know, Matt LaFleur says this all the time. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that they're young. Nobody cares that they're dealing with injuries. Everyone's dealing with injuries. They have to go out there on Sundays and perform, and they're not doing that right now. But with that said, the youth and inexperience on this team is absolutely a factor in what we're seeing on the offensive side of the ball. Again, doesn't mean it should be that way. It doesn't mean it's an excuse, but it's the Packers' reality, and we can't ignore that. I was talking to Tucker Kraft on Monday and asked him, really, what's the difference between the first half and second half? Because the Packers actually lead the NFL in points per game in the third and fourth quarter this season. Like, when they come out at halftime, there's a switch that flips in them. And he provided a perspective that I thought was really, really good in terms of just showcasing, you know, what a lot of these players on that offense are going through as rookies or inexperienced players. He essentially said that, you know, coming out of halftime, you have 20, 25 snaps under your belt at that point. You have a picture of what the defense is trying to do and how they're trying to defend you. You know, what the safety rotation looks like, you know, what the defensive front's doing in terms of stunts, twists, things like that, how the cornerbacks might be defending the receivers, physical things that they like to do. You see their scheme. And he was talking about how that's, you know, they settle in because there's a comfortability. And once you gain those experiences in the moment, that, you know, you're better positioned and better able to handle them. And if we rewind to that point I started on earlier about Denver throwing the Packers a curveball, Matt LaFleur said on Monday that, you know, their opening script, every team does that. The first 10 to 15 plays that they put together for the week are based on tendencies the opponent has put on tape. What do they like to do? And then how can we exploit that? And Matt LaFleur said that, you know, they put their plan together, and the Broncos, basically how they defended it was not something they had prepared for whatsoever. And LaFleur said that he didn't adjust like he should have. And, you know, this is where me pontificating on the top comes in. I don't think it's a lack of LaFleur not knowing or not, you know, being able to come up with something. I think a product of that is the youth. You have a team right now that, even in the game plan that you put together for the week and that you practice all week, like, they're not executing on that. They're not getting the little details right. There seems to be one player, and it's someone different, you know, almost every play, that is not doing their job correctly. And that just blows the whole thing up. And so when you have a unit that can't do that aspect consistently correct, all of a sudden being in the game and saying, all right, we're scrapping this and we're going to go implement this, something that they maybe didn't practice or haven't spent a lot of time on, like, that's a tall ask. And so I think at that point, you kind of just stick with, this is what we practice. We got to figure it out along the way. And to that point, a couple of weeks ago, Jordan Love had mentioned that the young pass catchers in particular, like, unscouted looks that the defense and the secondary specifically was giving them a tough time. And I think that kind of correlates to what, we had just discussed with what the Broncos defense did. Like in an unscouted look, like we haven't seen it before. Like you haven't seen it before.
Right.
You just got to go run your route, how they defend you, the spacing, the timing, and then that multiplied by everything else going on around you. Like you got to experience it. You know what I mean? To hopefully and quickly be able to overcome it. But in that moment, things are going to be thrown off. You might not run the route as precisely as you should. You might not be where you need to be when Jordan Love expects you to. And so I think that is a product of putting all these pieces together and everything we just discussed of what we're seeing right now. And that's not the only reason. The youth, the inexperience, and again, it's not something that the Packers can hang their hat on and say, oh, well, we're young. That's okay. Like they got to overcome it. But again, we can't, just because we don't like that as an answer, we can't act like that's not a factor in what they're experiencing either.
For sure. All right. Well, this one may be a quick one, but the trade deadline's Halloween. There's talk of, maybe Derrick Henry moving, maybe Saquon Barkley with a contract issue. This, to my mind, is Brian Gutekunst, a very clear youth movement in Green Bay. But do you have your eyes on anyone? I haven't read you anything that you've written about this in particular, but any inklings of a trade?
Now, even if the Packers were 4-2 right now, I don't think that they should be trading for anyone. And on the flip side, at 2-4, I don't think that they should be selling anyone off either. I think they need to stand pat. Reason I say that, ultimately, do they want to win games? Of course they do. But what's the ultimate goal this season? Figure out if Jordan Love's the guy or not.
Right.
And in that evaluation currently, it's really, really difficult to do so because of so many of the things we just talked about, because of all the chaos going on around him. In trading away a key veteran, and obviously most of the names that come to mind in that regard are on the defensive side of the ball. Keyshawn Nixon, Rasul Douglas has 1 year left on his contract in 2024. Devondre Campbell, you can pick your name, but that does not help the Packers. I know that's the opposite side of the ball, but you worsen the defense. Defense worse, they're probably going to give up more points. When they're giving up more points, the Packers are playing behind even more than what they have been. So what does that mean for Love in the offense? Those predictable passing situations we talked about earlier, you're in them. You're not able to lean on the run games because now you're just playing catch up the whole game.
Right.
Football is completely connected. And by making the defense worse, that's hurting Jordan Love. And ultimately, like I said, there's already a lot going on around him. And this isn't to absolve his play in certain times. Like he has to continue to improve as well. But they need to put the best team around him that they can in this moment. This is the team that they have. And rather than trying to make it better or be like, oh, we'll just see what we can acquire,
right?
They just got to make the best out of the situation that they have. And also, any of those players that I mentioned, like I don't see the Packers in return getting a top 100 pick. Like they're getting a day 3 pick. And what did they have? Like 22, 23 draft picks the last 2 years?
Yeah.
A lot of day 3 picks. Like they don't need more, developmental potential on this roster. They got plenty of it. Right. They need guys who can make an impact. Like that's what this roster needs. So I think if there was like the potential for getting, it doesn't happen in the NFL often, but like a player for player trade, and I don't have anyone in mind, but if you could get someone in return who's maybe just doesn't fit where they currently are, maybe has a year or two left on a rookie deal, inexpensive, and someone who could come in and maybe make an impact right away in some capacity, or at least you hope they can. Like I would be more open to that because they're at least helping the team out.
Right.
But trading for a 6th round pick, like I said, they've had 20 plus picks the past 2 years. There's a lot of youth on this team. There's a lot of potential development, but development needed on this team. Like to me, they don't need any more of that.
Yeah. We had 4 in the 7th round this year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we traded
absolutely.
One of those away, but yeah. And I mean, really, to me, the defense, if there was one thing that I think is going right or doing okay, it's the defense. So, subtraction by addition.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to play a little game of who's in and who's out?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to say a name and you tell me whether they're in or out. And that could be for the rest of the season or maybe after the season or whenever, because some of these won't even factor into a season. So, Joe Barry, in or out?
Oof. In for this season. I just don't see any changes happening. Again, I think that just creates more chaos for this Packers team with such a young unit that they're already trying to navigate. After the season, oh gosh, I'll coin flip and say in. I'm just going to bank on them sticking with continuity, whether that's right or wrong.
Anything to say about that, Brady?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I completely agree. I think he's in for the season. I have a certain source. I have to do nameless source. This is the first time I've ever done it, but who is a person or two removed from one of the decision makers that I heard was surprised that Joe Barry was still here after the bye. Now that surprised me. Yeah, because I am right with you. I would have not have thought any change, but that's what I heard. And I don't know. I mean, you probably know the name Jim Leonard out there. And I still kind of have this little bit of a, he was our first choice. And
he was.
yeah. So, but I again, the only thing that's going right now is that the defense, with all the injuries, and I don't know Devondre Campbell, they're still generally holding teams to winnable point totals. And that's what you ask a defense to do in the end. So yeah, you might be very well right.
Okay.
And I think as well, and again, after the season's a completely different conversation, but also like I can't sit here and pinpoint anyone on the defensive staff, like amongst the position groups, that you would go, oh yeah, he can step in and handle that responsibility, those play calling duties. So I have to think that would factor in as well in terms of in season.
Right. That's the question nobody wants to ask when they want somebody fired, but they never have, any idea who's going to fill that position.
Yeah. How about Matt LaFleur? Is he in or out?
Oh, and I think things would have to go drastically bad. Like, I think much worse than what we're currently experiencing for that to be a conversation. And then, I'm in on that one.
Okay. I agree.
Agreed.
How about the Packers O-line coach, Luke Butkus?
Great question.
Look at the last name. I mean,
I'm gonna go in. I think one thing that we've seen from Matt LaFleur is the kind of the value again of the continuity with the coaching staff. Now, maybe that includes Adam Stenovich's role still being an offensive coordinator. As things continue to spiral, everything's up in the air at that point in terms of, are they back? What's their role? But let's just say he's offensive coordinator still. Like, maybe they reshift, what his current responsibilities are. So he's spending more time in that offensive line room. Because that's obviously, as we know, where he started. And the Packers offensive line with him as the O-line coach was very, very good. Yeah. So maybe it's a shifting of responsibilities where some of, what Stenovich is asked to do now, and we don't have really much idea of what that includes. That's the interesting thing with Stenovich, is he's not the play caller, but he's the offensive coordinator. So what he's in on the conversations, he's helping with game plan, that kind of stuff. But specifically what he's asked to do, I mean, we don't have a terrific idea. I think in the past, last season, and maybe it's the same this season, he helped put together like the red zone package, going into each week. But, maybe you put those responsibilities on Jason Vrabel, the wide receiver coach, passing game coordinator, and say, all right, Steno, you're going to spend more time in the offensive line room. So, I mean, even in season, what we're just discussing now, like, I think that's absolutely worth a path worth venturing down at this point to see if they can, fix that offensive line play.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. How about the Lions in the NFC Championship, in or out?
Ooh, I'm gonna go out.
So you got
the Eagles and Niners.
You got the Niners and the Eagles. Okay.
That's pretty safe right there.
I'm still torn about that. I need a little more time.
I know that's not very bold. I know that's not very bold on my part, but
well, and they did get the boat race this week. I mean, man, they turned the TV copy over to the Falcons game here. So,
yeah. How about old Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to be back for the playoffs?
I really, really want to be in on this. I would love to see that happen.
Me too.
I'm going to be out. I'm going to be out just because what that would require, I think, is something that we've never seen before. So I guess from that, for this game, I'm going to go out just because we haven't seen it done before. So I'm going to go with the odds on that one. But I would absolutely love to see it. That Monday night game, the season opener for the Jets, I can't remember the last time I was more excited for a non-Packers game, just to see him in action and see what unfolded on the football field with him.
Same.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I've been out on that too, as much, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, as many things as I have seen Aaron Rodgers do that I did not think any human being could do. I'm just not sure about this one. So
Yeah, I don't think they're going to even make it to the playoffs. Personally,
might be a non-factor then. Yeah.
Brady must have written this question. Your beard when warm weather returns to Wisconsin in late July, is it in or out?
Always in. So rain or shine, December, July, I'm rocking the beard. As I was, growing this thing out, it's been several years that I've had it. It took some work to get to this point. So I'm a little nervous that if I got away from it, I don't know what would return. So it's here, and it's here to stay.
This is something I've never heard of. Cheese curds on your brat, in or out?
I've never had that, but I would be 100% in. There's the butcher shop just, I don't know, like a mile from us, if that, from our house. They have 80 different kinds of brats. You name it. There's there's like chicken Alfredo brats where if you look inside the casing with the sausage, you can literally see like noodles in there.
Hey, Paul.
Macaroni brats. I mean, you name it, they got it.
Is it beef and butter? Are you in Madison or? I'm not sure. Are you still in Green Bay?
Yeah, I'm in Green Bay.
Okay.
Just on the outside.
What is this place? Because there's a beef and butter in Madison that has the mac and cheese brats. And I was like, well, how good can a mac and cheese brat be? And it changed my life.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, you have not lived until you've had a mac and cheese brat. It's unbelievable.
The jalapeno cheddar brats, if you like a little spice.
Yeah.
They have a taco brat.
Oh.
So
chicken cordon.
Like I said, 8. Probably. I haven't seen it, but I wouldn't doubt it. That's on their billboard sign if you're going down 41. 80 different kinds of brats there.
Wow. What was his name again?
All fantastic. Telkins meat.
All right. Big shout out. We should get them as a
sponsor. There you
go. Yeah. You guys are making me hungry.
All right. So yeah, and I'm just gonna throw in, I'll put cheese curds on just about everything. I'm surprised I haven't had it on my cereal. Yeah. Okay. This just struck me, and I'm just going to ask you this. And do you think this team is missing Mercedes Lewis more than we probably think in terms of the run game? I don't know if you've paid attention to the personnel groupings or not, but it just struck me that we may be missing that guy more than we think in terms of leadership and, of course, like having another O-lineman on the field.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, talking about the offensive line struggles, like right now, Rasheed Walker at left tackle he's really going through his lumps right now. He's really, really going through growing pains. And to think if you could have someone of Mercedes Lewis's caliber as a blocker next to him to help out, I mean, that in itself would do wonders. Also for the tight end position specifically, Matt LaFleur talked about it numerous times over the summer. He considers the transition from college to the NFL to tight end position the second toughest one out there outside of the quarterback.
Right.
Reason being, just all the responsibilities that come with it, especially in this offense. Like those guys are moved around the formation, both sides of the line, in line, slot, Luke Musgrave's lining up out wide. They have to know route trees, route concepts like a receiver. They got to know blocking technique, like an offensive tackle. Like there's just so much that comes with that. And you truly don't see, from the impact, even the impact tight ends and first round picks, you oftentimes don't see their true impact until year 2 or even year 3. Right. And, the biggest learning curve with all of that is blocking. This summer I had the chance to talk to Luke Musgrave about that. And this is maybe a week or 2 into training camp, when things are really, really starting to ramp up at that point. And, I asked him, of course, with the background of the question being, the difficulty of the transition, what's the toughest part so far for you? And he said, hands down, the blocking part. So I absolutely think that, Mercedes Lewis could absolutely help this offense out. But as Brian Gutekunst made crystal clear over the summer, They are all in on the youth movement. And that's, when we were talking about earlier, the ups and downs that are coming with that experience, like maybe not to this degree, but certainly to a degree, they knew that was going to happen because that's what they signed up for and how the offensive side of the ball is constructed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about the defense a little bit, they're not losing games for us. If anything, they're keeping us in games for the most part, playing the best they can. And in your opinion, is the defense doing enough to live up to its billing? Because we still are struggling against the run. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question because, like you said earlier, and Matt LaFleur said this too, if you hold an opponent to under 20 points, you should win the game. Yeah. So by that math, the Packers should have 4 wins right now because the defense has done that. But this group isn't good enough for what the Packers need right now offensively. And whether that's fair or not on them, their struggles in the run game, situationally at times in terms of what they're, how they're lining up against the opposing offense. The pass rush this season outside of Rashawn Gary has been very, very inconsistent. Like they've really struggled to get after the quarterback, again, unless it's Rashawn Gary. And another big aspect as well, like they aren't generating turnovers. They have 5 this season, 5 takeaways. That ranks 28th in the NFL. So there's definitely room for improvement. And like I just mentioned, they, whether it's fair or not, based on kind of the burden that the offense is putting on them right now, they aren't good enough to get the job done. The Raiders game where they needed to stop, the Broncos game they needed to stop, even the Saints game that they won. Like they let the Saints march down the field and it was a field goal away from New Orleans winning that game.
Right.
So they aren't coming up with the turnovers. They aren't coming up with the big stops, knocking after the quarter. Like there's a lot of things that we can look at with this defense that they're just not, where the Packers need more right now from them. And again, whether that's fair or not, given what the offense is doing, because they're put in tough situations sometimes. Like looking at the Falcons game, that fourth quarter, like the defense, they took a lot of blame for what went down in that fourth quarter. And I get it. Bijan Robinson for the game rush for 200 yards, but the offense was on the field for 11 plays, 3 minutes of that fourth quarter. Like that's the opposite of complimentary football when your defense is getting absolutely run over. And fast forward to the Denver game here, the defense gives up the long drive, hold Denver to the field goal. Offense comes out and does a 3 and out. Now your defense is back on the field right away. Like there's just that lack of complimentary football, and that's on the offense too. Like your defense needs at least a first down or 2 in that moment, just to play catch up a little bit in terms of catching your wind and all that stuff. And boom, they're right back out on the field. So they've definitely been put in some tough spots, but with the talent that's on this unit, you just always feel like there's more that they can get from them. And right now, these last 2 games, it's not like they're going up against top offenses either. This week with the Vikings, they're without Justin Jefferson, but I mean, we saw Kirk Cousins. He looks really, really efficient right now. Jordan Addison at receiver, TJ Hawkinson at tight end. If he plays, I saw he was on the injury report on Wednesday. That group is going to present a challenge for that Packers secondary, who is banged up right now. And it's going to be really, really important for that pass rush to be able to generate something, because if Kirk Cousins is back there with time, with the pass catching options that he has, it feels like it's going to be a really tough matchup for this defense.
For sure. Well, one last question. When you're not camel racing in the Sahara, where can people find you, Paul?
How'd you know that?
I deep Googled you.
Yeah, I find all my work over at PackersWire. You can find me on YouTube. Channel name is Paul Bretl, Bretl. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Bretl.
Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us. It's really been fun to talk to you. Never got a chance to talk to you before. I'd love to get together next time I'm up in Wisconsin, or we're up in Wisconsin maybe one of these times. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And that will do it for us on the Nameless Packers pod. And I don't know about you, but I've got a notion that this pod may not remain nameless for much longer because Packer Nation needs to make a choice.
It's time.
It's time. We need a name.
Yes.
So probably within the next week or so, you're going to need to keep checking out the Facebook page, keep checking out the YouTube page. Get us on all your podcasting platforms. We will let you know how that's going to happen, where the polls are going to be taking place. And I can't wait for Packer Nation to choose a name for us because I'm feeling a little bit of an identity crisis. How about you, Aaron?
I was just going to say that.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. We've got some really good names in the hat for you guys to choose from. So I'm excited.
It's going to be so much fun. And remember, you can send us questions for Ask Us Anything at namelesspackerspod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We will answer any questions that we can anytime we get them. In the meantime, you guys have a great evening, afternoon, whenever you're listening to this. And hopefully we will check back with you after a big Packers win against the Vikings. Go Pack.
Go Pack.